Hello there, coming up on the Saturday Night Showdown. Google's new AI image generator is accused of erasing white people from history. Honestly, Google, who do you think you are? Netflix? Trigger-happy cops opened fire in the States because they thought that an acorn falling on their car was gunfire. And this week, the threat of Islamist violence forced the Speaker of the House of Commons to rip up the rulebook. So does he still think white supremacists and far-right extremists are the biggest threat to democracy? This is your Saturday Night Showdown. Discussing all tonight's topics, my brilliant panel joining me tonight are comedian Diane Spencer, the People's Gammon, Paul Cox, and the lawyer and polymath Andrew Eborn. Thank you, Tatiana, and welcome to the Saturday Night Showdown. Now, Google have had to put their AI image-generating tool Gemini on ice after it erased white people harder than a Netflix remake of an 80s TV show. Requests for pretty much anything returned historically inaccurate images of diverse people, such as Vikings, gingers, medieval knights, medieval kings, the founding fathers, the Pope, and even the Nazi Party. And hilariously, asking Google AI to be more historically accurate made them less historically accurate. The only way to get it to generate white people is by putting evil in front of whatever you're asking for. Then Gemini magically finds the white evil witch or white evil wizard. It's like how white men can suddenly appear in adverts if they're for domestic violence or gambling addiction. The Gemini project lead, Jack Kroczek, I think that's how you pronounce it, said that Gemini was designed to reflect our global user base, and we take representation and bias seriously. 1984 was supposed to be a warning, not an instruction manual. Anyway, I'm joined tonight by the broadcaster and lawyer Andrew Eborn. Hello. Plus two brilliant comedians, Diane Spencer, and the People's Gammon, Paul Cox.
Hello, my little rappers.
Because I saw those pictures of ginger people, and I'm like, of course there are some ginger people, because ginger is, it's a, a mutation on the melanocortin 1 receptor, so it can happen sort of anywhere.
Yeah, it is. I was going to say that, but you said it so much better. I thought it was wonderful.
That sounded like gingerphobia.
I think it was totally gingerphobia. What I love about it is they totally rewrote history, as you say.
Yeah.
So the founding fathers, they were also people of diverse kinds. So you had George White Washington, like that sort of stuff. What was it? Thomas Jefferson you could have, couldn't you? And Benjamin, frankly, don't give a damn. What I love about it is this sort of thing. Well, you need to look at the reason this has happened. The reason this has happened is ChatGPT used to come up with prejudices the other way.
Right.
So it used to turn around and say, look, everything was white-orientated. What they did, Google, it used to be called Bard. They changed the name to Gemini, because it's two fingers to everybody. They changed it basically to say every time somebody does a search, you need to make sure the results are inclusive.
Right.
And that's why it's gone completely the other way. They've taken it off the market. Yes.
Bias. They're trying to fix people's bias, and this is what Jack, the project lead, admits.
What's his surname?
They assume Kroczek or something.
It's a great Scrabble score. I love it.
No idea. Yeah, I think it's my Wi-Fi password. But he says, everybody is racist, so we need to combat this racism by serving up our own bias to try and tilt the bias in the other direction.
It's like you can't have your cake and eat it. What is it? Are we either going to tell the truth, or are we going to live this fantastically ridiculous lie? I think the whole thing's disingenuous.
AI already produces some very strange images, because, weren't a lot of the images that were being made of women sort of very over-sexualized.
Yeah, they're great.
No, they were a tad unrealistic, though, Leo. They were sort of big boobs, tiny waist. You would fall over.
When you can have a fantasy, is what I've always said. But you're absolutely right. They were unrealistic and unrepresentative of the real world.
Well, what happened was this: is that when they first started with AI, and I talk around the world on this stuff. Back to the Futurist. That's what I do. Me, myself, and AI. What happens is this: when you first chat things into ChatGPT, if it didn't know the answer, it would make it up. Right. So this is true. It's what were called hallucinations. So there was a lawyer who famously had a big case where he was suing an airline. Right. And he went and used ChatGPT, and they suggested 3 cases, and he stood in front of the judge and said, quoted these 3 cases.
As precedent. As
precedent. And the judge looked at him and said, Mr. I won't mention his name because he'll get sued. They're all made up. And the guy was almost disbarred as a result of it. So they used to have these things called hallucinations. AI is the best co-pilot to produce an initial draft. Right. They've taken it off the market to basically tweak it a little bit more, so it'd be a brilliant thing for the future. But I'd like to put the AI into Britain, so I think we'll work on that sort of principle.
Yeah, but I'm worried that these tech companies and execs at these tech companies that have, obvious bias themselves, like Jack himself espoused these anti-white, quite savagely racist opinions, they are basically deciding what people's opinions are going to be.
It's a big danger because you're worried about the notion of shadow banning. You are worried about the notion. It was very interesting when you said about white-owned businesses. Yes. Because there was obviously that big argument where they kept saying, this is a black-owned business. And it's like, well, great, but if you're going to call out that it's a black-owned business, you should call out this is an Indian-owned business, a white-owned business. You should make it playable, and you're right, because at the end of the day, it is controlled by people, and it's whatever crazy ideas these people have, like you, with your big boobs and your tiny waist. Like, you're going to end up with a bunch
Is that what Leo's got? I am now interested.
I'm wearing a reverse corset to actually even it out, Paul, and appear in this form.
But it's like all of these databases. What it is, and you work on that, but rubbish in, rubbish out. So what they've worked out is like a lot of these search things, there's a lot of prejudice when people are doing the programming, and that's what they're trying to do. So this is highlighting another side of it.
I don't think there is prejudice. I mean, there might be prejudice in the things that it scans and the things that a search engine or AI generator scans, but I don't think there's prejudice in the people just making a request to see. There's
basically the inadvertent prejudice, and this is what they're trying to do. So they're trying to balance it out. So it's a brilliant first draft.
So they're trying to balance out unconscious bias with their own very conscious bias. That sounds like a dangerous. That's like turning up to a fire and trying to put it out by adding bits of fire.
Throw it out with
some petrol on it. Yeah. Well, moving on to more serious matters, although I don't know what could be more serious than our history being rewritten. Boris Johnson has been in Ukraine pledging his support as the war with Russia reaches its 2-year anniversary. Let's take a look at what he said.
In spite of everything, those gallant, heroic Ukrainians are fighting on, and I've got absolutely no doubt that they are going to win. And I think that with the support of the West, provided we do the right thing, give them the right support, militarily, politically, and economically, the courage of Ukrainians, their natural determination to fight for their homeland will prevail.
Andrew, strong words from Boris.
Oh, he's great. Some TV channel should sign him up. I think he's glorious. What I was interested in, he's with Vadim Pristaiko. Do you know who he is? He was the former... another Scrabble score. He was the former UK ambassador for Ukraine over here. He got sacked by Zelensky. And the reason he got sacked by Zelensky, do you remember when good old Ben Wallace was turning around and saying that Zelensky should be grateful for all the stuff, and Zelensky was a bit sarcastic in response. So he got sacked as a result of it. It's interesting he's standing there. But good luck for Boris. I think the claim that we're going to win is interesting.
Well, this is the thing, Andrew, because, I mean, the West at the moment seems to be wavering in its support for Ukraine. And this is something that I think a lot of people always feared, because Putin, obviously, isn't going to waver in his own support.
I think what would have been more interesting is if we could have had somebody who would never do this, but Trump going. Because right now, over the last 2 years, Russia has shown that it has now come to rely on other countries that have had sanctions put on them, like Iran and North Korea.
Armenia as well, and Turkey. The exports of these, you know, the microchips and all the things that Russia needs for its military machine. Obviously, they're not being sent straight to Russia anymore.
Yeah.
But the exports to Kyrgyzstan and Armenia have shot up. So we're obviously, you know, European countries are just diverting things around.
And also you're going to find that as a result of the appalling thing about Navalny and stuff like that, what's going to happen is the support for Ukraine is galvanised.
Right.
And I think as a result of that sort of stuff, people are turning around. You mentioned Trump. I think Putin is far scarier of Trump than he is of Biden. And it'd be very interesting to see. It is true.
Who isn't, though?
Yeah.
Who is scared of Biden? Biden is scared of Biden when he sees himself in the mirror every morning.
I'll tell you who's scared of Biden. The Democrat Party are scared of Biden. They're like, man, it's like Weekend at Bernie's for them. They're like, we've got to get this guy over the finishing line somehow. How are we going to do it?
You should be scared of Biden's dog, though, because his dog's been attacking all the time. You see all of that? Horrendous.
9 times in 24 months.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, that's insane, considering the American cops shoot most dogs when the dogs haven't bitten anybody. Anyway, coming up, we will assess the week's winners and losers in Kearsed or Blessed. This week, the Guardian sports writer who wants to abolish women from sports, the police force spooked by falling acorns, and has Javier Milei saved the Argentinian economy? Afuera! And we'll show you what happened when this prisoner was taken for a shower.
More about that.
Hello and welcome back to the Saturday Night Showdown. Kearsed or Blessed is coming up, but first, I promised I would show you what happened when a prison guard took an inmate for a walk to the showers. So that was somebody trying to frame a prison guard for brutality, but unfortunately there were lots of cameras around, so he didn't get away with that.
It was an early bath, wasn't it? I mean, that was what a nightmare!
That was insane.
There's got to be better ways of framing people. Is he alive?
Yeah, he is alive.
So he took a dive. Was that the idea? He took a dive and was going to blame the prison officer as a result.
Yeah,
the cameras picked up the incident, and that's
Yeah, look
what
at it again.
happened.
Yeah,
There's
no,
also loads of witnesses.
And they're also like, yeah, lots of people around. Unless he was just going to do a runner. Absolutely fine.
Extraordinary.
Probably. Anyway, it's time now for Kearsed or Blessed. Me and my brilliant panel will look at 3 big stories and decide who are the week's winners and who are the losers. And we start with Guardian sports journalist Jonathan Liu, who has taken the unusual position for a sports journalist of wanting to abolish women from sport. Plenty of people, notably J.K. Rowling, have highlighted the impact of transgender athletes starting to dominate girls' and women's events. But Jonathan, as a woke, left-wing Guardian writer, thinks that this is a great idea. He says, let's say transgender athletes pour into women's sport, and let's say they dominate everything they touch. Why would that be bad? Really? Imagine a trans child or teenager seeing a trans athlete on the top step of the Olympic podium. It would be inspiring.
I'm sorry, but trans people make up how much of the population? 0.1%?
Yeah.
So what about the 50% that are women?
Yeah.
And like, I'm sorry, but it's bad enough when you're trying to do sport and you're a girl.
Yeah.
I know because
What's
I've
interesting
tried.
is that trans men, people who used to be women and turn into trans, you don't hear of them winning any of the sports. So all this bit about, you look at the reasons that sports were divided into original sex or cis sex or whatever it is, was simply because
Male and female. I think we just say male and female.
Exactly. It's to do with strength. So the whole idea of competing, work on that basis. Maybe we should have some, and J.K. Rowling as in bowling. So you work on that sort of principle, that if it's to be fair in sport, maybe they should have their own sports if they want to do that sort of thing, or turn around and say, let's base it on strength.
And I'd
but
probably
you need to
watch
work on
that
basis.
sport, because that'd be pretty funny. Next up, we've got acorns. The American police, this American police force are unsurprisingly back in the spotlight after a video emerged of a pretty extraordinary incident. Police officers in Florida opened fire on an SUV after they mistook an acorn dropping on the roof of their car as gunfire. Take a look.
Shots fired!
So two police officer basically emptied entire clips of this poor guy who'd done nothing. It was an acorn that fell. You can see in one of the videos, you can actually see the acorn
coming down,
bouncing off the...
Oh, I've got a picture of it. It's fantastic. It's got its own little account now. It's wonderful.
Oh my God.
But the reality is this.
It's now the most wanted acorn in the Los Angeles
it's
area.
there. Work on that principle. Yes, out of tiny acorns, woke trees grow. You've got to work on that sort of basis. It's a bit worrying, though, isn't it? They're so trigger-happy on this sort of thing. This is the concern, is they're so highly charged when they go to these events. The slightest thing, they
were triggered by autumn.
Worse.
Luckily, there are some funny memes coming out of it. Here's the Office meme where corporate wants you to tell the difference between this picture and this picture. It's a gun and an acorn. It's the same picture. That one wasn't that funny, but there are funny memes. Here's one, the acorn falling in a car. Again, it's not actually that funny, but you can see the thought that's gone into it.
I mean, to be fair... Oh, sorry.
No.
Well, these are better. Look, this is a funny one.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. That'll work as a funny line.
That's the police showing a table of acorns that they've seized.
I think, to be fair, we've all been in the car when, like, a twig or something has landed on the car, and it does make you jump a little bit.
Yeah.
But if I had a gun, I mean, maybe I would be shot because I wouldn't be that quick. I'd be like, OK, where did that come from? You know, I'd at least try and find who was shooting at me first. But he just sort of peppers the neighbourhood.
But I have heard a gunshot. I've been in London, and they don't sound anything like acorns dropping on car roofs. I mean, it is a surprise, it is a shock, but it doesn't sound like a gunshot.
The trouble is that sense of readiness, and this is the problem, and it is a very serious problem. You're lucky nobody did die, because the reality is, if you go bang behind somebody, their fingers on the trigger, they're going to do it.
I did that once to my husband. He was changing...
No,
he was changing a light bulb, and I snuck up behind him with a party popper, and I pulled it, and it was great. But he was very angry.
You're lucky we don't have open carry laws.
There you go.
And you could have been shot. Your husband could be at the top of the step ladder.
And the decree nice just come through, is that right? You work on that basis.
Anyway, next up, it's our old friend. It's Argentina's president, Javier Milei.
Oh, I love him.
How they laughed at him for taking advice from cloned versions of his dead dogs. How they laughed when he appeared at press conferences with a chainsaw. But Javier has been proven absolutely correct. He ran for election, promising to reduce the size of the state by slashing bureaucracy, eliminating government publicity campaigns, and reducing subsidies. But January was his first month in full power, and lo and behold, Argentina had its first budget surplus in 12 years. They're over $500 million in the black. Well, it's what all administrations in the West seem to be thinking as well. I mean, the share of GDP spent by the state is just gradually ratcheting up in every country. We're just slowly, like a frog being boiled, slowly sleepwalking into communism.
You're right, like a frog being boiled is the analogy he was going to use. And what I love about him, he's got if you want to get ahead, get a great head of hair.
Yeah.
We always love him. He's our poster boy for this. But the reality is, if you don't spend the money, you're going to have more of it. So I don't know what the shocking story is. I haven't spent it. I've got more. Hurrah! Let's do that. So you work on that principle. But you're right. If it still continues, and it's a big if it still continues to operate in the right way, it means money was being wasted. So all credit to him. Don't write him off. Look at that sort of basis. If it's not, and things are collapsing because he's not spending money on it, then it raises different questions.
And let's just watch the video, the famous video of him saying how he's going to slash the public sector.
Turismo y deporte, afuera. Ministerio de Cultura, afuera. Ministerio de Ambiente y Desarrollo Sostenible, afuera. Ministerio de las Mujeres y Género y Diversidad, afuera. Ministerio de Obras Públicas, afuera.
Paul just asked if he ran Pimlico Plumbers, but I think he was actually the drummer in Oasis.
He was.
But Diane, Liz Truss said she was going to slash the woke blob, the civil service. And then the woke blob, the civil service and the system, the deep state, in her words, got rid of her. Do you think we should have given her a chance to slash the public sector?
No, because Liz Truss kind of did it the wrong way round.
Yeah,
she really did. And also, like, what she and Kwasi Kwarteng did was just such a massive implosion in our economy. It really wasn't good.
So they announced the tax cuts before announcing the public spending cuts, which obviously spooked investors in Britain.
They did it completely the wrong way round.
Discuss it with the key people. That's the lesson, isn't it?
Yeah.
Discuss it with everybody. Because it's actually a great idea. If you look at it, make sure everybody's on board.
Yeah.
But you need to look at these things not in isolation. It's like any part of the equation.
Yeah.
Don't look at one side of the seesaw without the other. Don't spend money, you got more.
Discuss it with the civil service. They'll tell you not to do it, and then you do it anyway.
Exactly. That's okay. We love dictatorships like that.
What's great?
Sorry, go
Yes,
on.
Margaret Thatcher. Never be sorry.
Margaret Thatcher, God bless her. She took 7 years to get her union reforms in.
Yes.
7
Wow.
years, from 79 to 86. She wanted to do that in 79, but she knew very wisely, and she didn't. She built her cabinet around people that didn't necessarily support her as well. And the difference with her and Liz Truss is Liz Truss's cabinet was just her mates.
Yes.
Right.
Going back to Millet, what I do like is that he went to Davos and he basically said to everybody at Davos, look, you need to stop this socialism because you are actually restricting people's freedoms by not allowing them to be capitalists and not allowing them to generally have freedom and make money.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that he said that to Davos.
He's
It's
a great
fabulous.
man, and he flew there on a commercial jet instead of flying there on a private jet.
Yes.
Anyway, next on the Saturday Night Showdown, why have we allowed threats from Islamists to completely derail our parliamentary system? Plus, on a slightly lighter note, who would win in a fight between a man and a tree? Take a look at this. Welcome back to the Saturday Night Showdown. Multicultural Corner coming up. But first, I promised I would show you what happens when you karate kick a tree.
Yeah.
Paul, you've been seen fighting with shrubbery after a few drinks.
Shrubbery?
What did this guy do wrong?
When the old Gammon's been out on the side, I'm often there, you know, fighting trees. But he was dressed as the tree as well, wasn't he?
That's how he got so close.
It's a wonderful. Yes, exactly. So it didn't run off.
Look at him. It's a sort of, what was he trying to do there? Who was he trying to impress? Who
Obviously,
was that
the camera
impress?
person. Who,
Had he won?
impressed.
I was very
What are you
impressed.
talking about? This is
Had
very
he won
impressive.
that fight?
Yes.
You can't chalk it down as a success, can you? It's a dead tree.
Most of the trees have already gone on. It's like, but do you think he's going to go on and then fight, you know, a giant redwood or something?
Well, good luck to him.
Yeah. Yeah, good luck to him. Well, it's been another tumultuous week in British politics as Parliament descended into complete chaos. MPs walked out of the chamber on Wednesday evening in protest over amendments tabled to a vote on a ceasefire in Gaza. It's the Speaker of the House, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, who's facing the most backlash. He's been accused of bowing to pressure from the Labour Party to bring their specific amendments to the vote. Many Labour Party MPs have received death threats, graffiti and intimidation, with one MP told that his wife would be shown what a real man is. MP Mike Freer stood down after threats. The Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has said he was just responding out of concern for the safety of those MPs. Now, I'm not sure that we should be subverting democracy to appease threats from Islamists, but when Hoyle was questioned on Sky about the threats faced by MPs, different groups were foremost in his mind. Let's have a look at what he said.
You can't divorce anti-Semitism from the threats and attacks he's faced. Do you agree with that framing? Is that the key risk and cause at the moment?
We've lots of risk and we've lots of people who don't. Whether it's people who are white fundamentalists, the people there, the rise of the extreme right, to terrorists coming across. We face many threats.
Now, I have to clarify that this interview took place before this week, but it's in the same context. I mean, are you worried about the threat to British democracy? And are you surprised that, Diane, that, you know, despite the obvious rise of Islamism in the UK, people are still saying, oh, no, the real problem is far-right extremists. I mean, I can't remember the last time a far-right extremist, you know, committed a terrorist atrocity or threatened MPs.
No, and OK, so there's a lot here. So with Lindsay Hoyle sort of denying the amendments to the whole of the SNP, I'm not surprised people walked out.
Yeah.
And the apology that Lindsay Hoyle gave, I was not impressed with at all. I mean, 10 out of 10 babes for emotion,
Yeah.
but 1 out of 10 for the words. I heard the words, and she is clearly not completely committed. When you say things like, oh, I own up to my mistakes, oh, there's a saucer of milk already coming in there. You know, you could start to tell it's a bit of a manipulative apology. If my mistake was caring so much, Lindsay Hoyle, why didn't you just say, I'm sorry you feel that way?
Yeah.
Because that's how it came across.
Exactly. So it totally is just stop Hoyle, isn't it? You work like, I see what I did there.
How long have you been waiting for that?
Forever. I just love the story.
I'm worried that he's basically admitted, yes, we folded.
Yes.
We folded. I did this because we were being intimidated by Islamic extremists, which is basically saying to the Islamic extremists, you won.
Yeah.
Do more of it.
And
It
that's
works.
absolutely the point. And so let's look at this, because actually the reality is it's totally party political.
Yeah.
The reason it was introduced was to show the division in the Labour Party. That was the whole point of the SNP thing. So Labour wanted to stop that so people couldn't shine a spotlight on their division. If you bear that in mind, then the rest of it folds into insignificance. And the whole thing about Sir Lindsay, and I think he's a great speaker. I like him as a man, and I think he does a great job generally. He was wrong on this.
Yeah.
The bit about, if I'm guilty of caring too much, I thought, we don't get that at all. But the reality is, it was a party political thing, and that's the issue.
But going back to then Leo's second point about the rise of the Islamist fundamentalists,
Yes.
I think, like, I consider myself on the left, although many people apparently don't because I'm sat here. But
Left of Leo.
Left of me.
I think we're all
Aren't we all?
Far left of me.
But you have to be realistic, because there is an increasing presence of people in the UK who want Sharia law. And I'm like, stop, because if you can't acknowledge that, and if you say, oh no, we can't talk about that, so that's racist, you are going to sleepwalk into a situation where suddenly there's going to be a lot of oppression happening. And if that does happen, I'm one of the first groups that goes down.
And it's very simple. It's parliamentary procedure. He got it wrong. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And his job is to enforce parliamentary procedure. He's right to be scared. I think it's appalling that MPs are threatened. We've had already murders and things like that. Mike Freer, when you talk about him and his concern for his family, all of that's appalling. The parliamentary procedure, however, is in place because of democracy, and that was upset this week.
And I think it's pathetic for people to still be deflecting and saying, oh, but white supremacy, far-right extremists. I mean, I've never actually seen one. Anyway, next on the Saturday Night Showdown, it's time for Clown World. This week, Cristiano Ronaldo's girlfriend's butt, and the UK university which does not know the difference between Plus, I'll show you what happened when this guy dropped his phone whilst trying to film an alligator.
Maybe if the gator left, I would get it. But even then...
Maybe, like, there's, like, the walking stick.
Hello, welcome back to the Saturday Night Showdown. Clown World is coming up, but first I promised I would show you what happens when you drop your phone in front of an alligator.
Walking stick isn't long enough.
Oh, he's gonna eat it.
No, it's not.
Oh my god.
For anyone listening on radio, that was an alligator eating someone's phone, just in case anybody thought that was somebody had reached down to grab the phone and that was their arm. Would you be able to resist phoning that phone to your ring the alligator's belly?
Oh my God, but imagine what kind of ringtone you might have. And suddenly you've got this alligator swimming along with like...
The Jaws ringtone, so the next victim it goes up to...
I love it. And the alligator taking the snap, so it's got to be good on the phone.
Lovely work, Andrew.
We're near the end of the show, and it's time to have some fun. Let's see what Iranian photoshoppers at Iran's biggest newspaper have been up to this week. And let's play a game of Spot the Difference. Here's picture one of footballing icon Cristiano Ronaldo and his family. They seem to be having a splendid time celebrating his 39th birthday. And here's picture two. Iran's state newspaper, that's part of the Iranian regime, got hold of the photo. You can see they photoshopped her butt off rather inelegantly. Apparently, you can't show plump buttocks in Iran because it'll inflame people's passions. It's the same idea behind, covering.
Yeah, this is why I've never worked in Iran. My agent keeps saying, I'm trying to get you to Iran work, but you've got the plump buttocks, mate.
Yes, no ifs or buts is what they say. They do work on that basis. It's got to be true. No, but you're right about sensibilities. They cover things up and so on and so forth. And it's the same. If you've got any extreme things, they'll reduce it.
But it's not extreme. Yeah, that was just her bum. And the worst part is they didn't even Photoshop it in a nice way.
It was like a hack thing. It was like the alligator got her, wasn't it?
Yeah. That woman's got beautiful beautiful figure.
Yes.
She's got a beautiful figure, and they just lopped it off.
Yeah.
I mean, oh no, he should do something. He should sue Iran.
Yeah, we're not spend any money there. And how about this appalling mix-up? Another organisation has had a terrible week. The University of Birmingham has been branded as ignorant this week after the organisation got into a spot of bother in distinguishing Sikhism from Islam. In a now deleted Instagram post, the university claimed that a langar, a community meal organised by Sikh students, was actually an event in the lineup for their Discover Islam week. I mean, Andrew, I have to enjoy that. I admit seeing people striving to signal their virtue signalling their diversity, knowledge of diversity and stuff, and get it wrong.
Yeah, we're so quick to take offence, though. I have to say, it's ignorance, but it's not malicious ignorance. It's not sort of turning around trying to be deliberately difficult.
Were you expecting the University of Birmingham to organise a pogrom?
Well, you could... well, exactly. But it's wrong, isn't it? Just to say they didn't know what the community meal is. Yeah. So you tell them once, and if they get it wrong again, you might be a bit more upset. But just to say, oh, you didn't know about this community meal, this is what it's called, and I think it's wrong. It's overstepped the mark. We're too quick to take offence.
Do you agree with Andrew? Do you think... Or,
you have to agree, or you can be wrong.
I like it when if it's woke, people are all like, oh, look, I love diversity, I'm such a good person, I push it and all the rest of it. And then they get it completely wrong and fall on their faces. That's what I love to...
Well, it's yummy, isn't it?
Yeah.
You absolutely know that because they work for a university, they're going to be woke. I mean, that's part of the interview process now, I'd imagine. Yeah.
That's why a lot of comedy gigs have actually been shut down in universities, and why some comedians aren't allowed to perform there, because they've got very strict virtue signalling, and you get that list of things saying, I mean, please don't mention any of these things to the students.
You have to sign a behaviour agreement form before you perform at some universities.
In some places,
I've got in trouble performing at universities.
I know you have.
Wasn't even invited before.
Yeah, he was
walked into the woke studies
just
class.
Drunk and turning up naked wasn't the best plan. And thanks to my brilliant panel tonight, Diane Spencer, Paul Cox and Andrew Eborn. See you again next week. Bye.